Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Goldman. I am the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and it's my pleasure to present this evening's topic all about hunger hormones, specifically ghrelin and leptin, and how those factor into appetite regulation. As always, at the very end, I'll leave time for any questions you may have. So feel free to think about what those questions might be, and you can ask it about this topic or any other nutrition-related topic that may be on your mind. Even though we're talking about hunger hormones and not touching on food too much tonight, I still like to remind everyone of our weekly mantra that it is the quality of your calories that matters. We do touch on this a little bit, so you can see how that fits in, but try and remember this every day, every week, because it can really impact the quality of the outcome while you're using the GLP-1 medications as well. What we will cover today, again, are the appetite hormones that we know of in the body, what might be some disruptors of those hormones that can negatively impact you, how the GLP-1 medications fit into all of this, some nutritional practical strategies that will help support those hormones, a couple of challenges for the week, and time for any questions again that you may have. To briefly go over these two hormones in particular, the first one, ghrelin, or the hunger hormone, or since the name might be hard to remember, ghrelin makes me think of the word gremlin, and so you can think of it as the hunger gremlin, because this is the only gut hormone that we know of that signals I'm hungry or it's time to eat. So ghrelin rises before it's time to eat, so before meals when you're feeling particularly hungry. And once you are satiated, it falls very quickly afterwards. Thankfully, this is one of the hormones that is suppressed by these GLP-1 medications, so that hunger feeling tends to not be quite as strong. It still is there, but maybe not as strong. Then there's also the hormone leptin, which is a satiety hormone. And instead of the other gut hormones, which I'll touch on in the next slide, leptin is actually produced by our fatty tissue. And so this is sort of signaling to the brain, we have enough energy stores, we don't need to have an appetite to try and eat more. But in obesity, there is something called leptin resistance, which can develop. It doesn't happen for everyone. But what that means is that that appetite suppressing effect that we would expect the leptin to have may not actually be occurring quite as strongly as one would hope. Because you would think that if someone has enough fat stores on their body, then their appetite should be suppressed. But we know that this isn't always the case. And also, leptin will decrease during weight loss. And even though we're looking to decrease our fat mass and lose weight, and naturally that would mean that the leptin levels in our bodies would decrease, that also is one of those things that can sort of negatively impact and is important to be aware of, because as we lose weight, the leptin decreases, which may signal to the brain, oh, we need to eat more. Even though if you're not at your goal weight, you're thinking, this is not what I'm going for. I like to tell people about that because sometimes it can help people recognize their hunger cues or tune into that a little bit more to make sure they're feeling true hunger cues versus maybe a leptin hunger cue. Those are not the only two hormones involved in appetite signaling and regulation. They are the headliners of this topic today, but there are many, many other gut hormones, and I did want to point out a few others. Specifically, cholecystokinin or CCK, which is also a sensor. It responds with fat and protein intake, and it signals fullness to the brain. There's also peptide YY or PYY, which can be released upon the consumption of protein and fiber. Also an appetite suppressant, you'll see that each one of these hormones off to the side here have that little minus sign because these are all supposed to be appetite suppressing hormones. Also, even you can see here the GIP, it will support insulin secretion, also plays a role in fat storage. And you may be familiar with it because it's also one of the hormones mimicked in tirzepatide, or also known as Mounjaro or Zepbound. So it's a GLP-1 and GIP. Something you might find interesting, you would think that with all these hormones that are suppressing the appetite, that we would maybe have a stronger feeling, but the hunger gremlin ghrelin is quite loud and quite strong, and this one tends to speak a little more loudly than all of these hormones put together. Also, there are factors that can disrupt the hormones and make them maybe not quite as effective. For one example, we have sleep deprivation. I know that we hear about the importance of sleep, and this is another reason why, because people who are sleep deprived have been shown to eat upwards of 300 to 500 extra calories daily. And that extra 300 to 500 calories can and will ultimately lead to weight gain. We may also see that ghrelin will increase, so you'll feel that hunger a little more strongly, and the leptin may decrease, which also imparts that hunger feeling. Chronic stress is also involved here. Cortisol is listed, which also cortisol is involved with sleep deprivation. And over time, so a one-time deal of stress is not going to necessarily lead to weight gain, but chronic stress can eventually cause the body to not be as sensitive to our leptin signals, which can then lead to more hunger. And this is where people often will talk about giving into cravings. Ultra-processed foods are also a type of food, as you know, that is a very quick burn. It's geared toward being very tasty, very desirable, but you can't stop at just one, is one phrase you may think about when you're thinking about ultra-processed foods. And so if we have that quick rise and quick fall with those types of foods, then we're going to have that increase in appetite very soon afterwards. And physical inactivity in a slightly different way. It's shown that regular physical activity can improve our body's sensitivity to leptin to help us feel more fed over time. And at this point, we may be thinking, well, how does the GLP-1 medication fit into this, or how does it cooperate? As you know, or may not know, but I'm here to tell you, the GLP-1 medications actually mimic the natural GLP-1 hormone that our bodies release after eating. But the one that our bodies release after eating doesn't last days or weeks. It's more like minutes. And so having this medication, which acts like the hormone, but for a longer period of time, we can see that it is helping to suppress that ghrelin for longer, can help increase that leptin sensitivity. Part of that is through weight loss. So it seems as though, just like when some people aren't as sensitive to insulin and then they have this weight loss, they have this improvement. Through the weight loss, we can have that sensitivity. However, as you know, as I mentioned before, some initial weight loss, you may still be feeling that hunger because of the loss of fat mass. But over time, we can see that the sensitivity to the leptin you have can improve, and then you're going to have those I'm full signals be a little bit stronger. We also know that GLP-1 medications can slow gastric emptying, which helps you feel full, and gives a little boost or amplifies the signaling that we're getting from some of those other gut hormones. So we can feel a little bit, we can feel the effects of those satiety hormones just a little bit better there. And while the GLP-1 medication is helping and cooperating with your hormones, we also have some nutrition strategies that can also help support them. One is to prioritize protein at every meal. It is the most satiating macronutrient, and it helps suppress that ghrelin and boost the other gut hormone that can help suppress your appetite, the PYY. Also, focusing on fiber-rich foods. And if you've been with me for a few of these presentations, you know I focus in on protein and fiber, and these are just some other reasons why, because it also slows digestion and can help with supporting of the signaling from the hormones that boost, or not boost appetite, but help keep your appetite at bay. You do want to avoid skipping meals whenever possible, because skipping meals can lead to an increase in the ghrelin circulating, because of course, if it's time to eat and you haven't, that hunger hormone is going to show up. And then you may find that at your next meal, you're going to eat more than you intended. Also, try and limit ultra-processed foods, as they don't keep you full. And they also don't provide as much nutritional quality. And this is where the quality of your calories can factor in quite significantly. And finally, staying hydrated, because thirst is oftentimes misinterpreted as hunger, especially as we get older. And so if you're making sure to prioritize hydration, that may also help prevent some snacking that you didn't intend to have. And with covering all of that, we've already gotten to a couple challenges for the week. The first one I called back to basics, because we're focusing on protein first. And that was one of my first challenges I ever imparted on people. And we're going back to that, because maybe it's time to go back to some of those building blocks that you started with, and aim to get that protein containing food at every single meal. For breakfast, it can be eggs and Greek yogurt. That can also be for your lunches and dinner. I plan on having an egg dish for dinner tonight. And then if you feel like you've really got the protein down, then look at challenge number 2, where we're actually not talking about specific foods, but we're keeping track of our sleep and how we rank our hunger off after we've slept well and after we've maybe not slept so well. Chances are you will notice some differences in your hunger cues depending on how well you slept the night before. I'd be very interested to know if you can see that type of correlation after you've had a chance to write it down. So give one of these or both of these a shot this next week and see where that gets you. So to summarize all of this up, I'm sure it's very evident that hormones play a big role in noticing of hunger, when we feel hungry, and when we're not feeling hungry. And thankfully, the GLP-1 medications are a very helpful tool that can help us tune into those hunger cues and be a little more mindful of them. But remember that it's also very important to prioritize taking care of yourself with adequate sleep, managing your stress, and getting in the right types of foods that are high in protein and are generally whole, real foods as often as possible, because this can help support our hormones, but also our overall health in the long term. And with that, I will leave it open to questions. All right, well, it was an absolute pleasure this evening. I hope that you found something informative or enlightening during this discussion. If you do have questions later or would like to schedule some time to meet with myself or with one of the providers at Premier Weight Loss, please reach out to one of the offices and they'll be happy to get you set up. Hope you have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.